Greetings, everyone. Today's presentation is about what designers do. There is a broad range of design disciplines that designers get involved with, and what we'll do is we won't be able to talk about all of them, but we'll talk about a few of these design disciplines that are available as undergraduate and graduate and PhD degrees at universities, are also accepted professions in corporations and consultancies, and we'll talk about a few of those today. The ones we'll refer to are industrial design, also sometimes referred to as product design, transportation design, which includes the design of cycles, motorcycles, cars, scooters, etc. We'll talk about graphic design, also referred to as visual communication design sometimes, fashion design, sometimes also referred to as apparel design, architecture, the creation of buildings, landscape architecture, which goes a little bit beyond architecture into the spaces around the architecture, interior design, which gets inside the buildings, or the interior spaces. We'll talk about a new discipline called interaction design, which refers to the engagement between people and things. And finally, we'll talk about another new discipline called service design, which looks at all the intangible services that go hand in hand with the physical artifacts that people design. So let's talk about each one of them really briefly, and then later on in this module, we'll get into a lot more detail about each of these design disciplines that you see here on the screen today. As you think about the landscape in which we live, as you look at the neighborhood, the surrounding, the city, the urban landscape in which you live, you see a whole range of material artifacts. You'll see roads, you see bridges, you see buildings, you see gardens, you see boats, you see signage. All of these things are designed by people. All of these things are engineered by people. All of these things are sold, marketed, talked about. These things make up our material landscape. These are things that designers spend a good bit of time planning, thinking about, creating, and then implementing and putting them out into the world. And so as you look at any landscape around you, as you look at your environment, you look at your neighborhood, you will see the impacts and the results of design activity all around you. Let's start with the first one. Let's start with the one called industrial design. Industrial design is also referred to as product design, and essentially this is a discipline that refers to the creation of a whole range of what one might call consumer products. And very often this could include everything from television sets to chairs to cars to anything you can think of that can be referred to as a consumer product. An example here is a chair designed by a company called Herman Miller, which is called the Aeron chair. And this is a chair that the company spent quite a bit of time thinking about things like ergonomics. How comfortable is this chair? Can we design it so that a person who might spend hours in this chair, at least 8 hours a day, can they be comfortable sitting in this chair? So what you see here is an example of industrial design where the designer has thought about things like comfort, things like safety, manufacturability, aesthetics, and all that gets factored into the creation of this product. So industrial design essentially is the creation of essentially industrially manufactured goods, hence the name industrial design, but also referred to as product design. Within industrial design, there are a few disciplines that have split off or have specialized, and one of those can be referred to as transportation design. And essentially, transportation design in most cases refers to the design of cars, but it could also refer to other vehicular designs. For example, the design of scooters, the design of motorcycles, the design of bicycles, railway systems. So all of that can be referred to as the subdiscipline or an offshoot or a related discipline to industrial design that can be called transportation design. Another discipline of design, which is referred to as graphic design, also in some schools and some universities referred to as visual communication design. So while industrial design can be referred to as the creation of physical things, three-dimensional physical objects, very often graphic design refers to the creation of two-dimensional materials. So for example, if you take a look at something like a magazine or a book, these are created by graphic designers. What they do is they look at things like legibility, they look at things like aesthetics, they look at things like layout, they look at things like typography, color, texture, materials. All of those issues are addressed by graphic designers. So traditionally, graphic designers focused on things like books, posters, magazine, things of that nature. But nowadays, with all the digital media that we have around us, graphic designers also focus on things like the development of applications for smartphones or tablets. They focus on things like website design. So graphic design has now extended its reach beyond the printed world into the world of digital media as well. So it's expanded what it has been doing. Another discipline of design, fashion design. And as the term might suggest, this is the design very often of clothing. So apparel design, or the design of things like skirts and pants and shirts, etc., is a part of what fashion design does. Fashion design goes beyond that. It looks very carefully at technology as well, the whole new area of wearable technology, where you can weave in technology into fabric. All of that is also a part of fashion design. In some cases, the design of shoes is also considered to be a part of fashion design, but it also is one of those products that bridges the gap between product design and fashion design. So in a sense, fashion design or apparel design refers to the creation of things that one would wear, artifacts that cover or clothe the human body. Yet another discipline of design, which can be referred to as one of the older disciplines of design, is that of architecture. And architecture, in a sense, can be referred to as the design of buildings. So you see in this case, example of the Empire State Building. This essentially is a large structure that houses people. So in a sense, what architects do is they look at the site, they look at the needs of people, they look at what needs to go into a building, they look at infrastructure, they look at amenities, and all of that gets factored into the creation of these buildings. Architecture can be classified, in a sense, into commercial architecture, or what you see in this image with Empire State Building, or it could also be classified as residential architecture. And you have both forms of architecture, essentially the creation of buildings that go onto specific sites. If you take architecture and extend it beyond the footprint of the building, you get landscape architecture. What landscape architects do is they think of clearly the space on which the building exists, but what happens around it? What ecosystem is surrounding this building? What are the plants, the trees, the habitats? What exactly is happening in that neighborhood around that building? And the creation of things like gardens, the creation of things like these landscapes is a part of what landscape architects do. So they take into account the specifics of the site, but they also very carefully take into account things like what is native to that habitat, what is native to that ecosystem, and build that into the design of the landscape that surrounds the building. While landscape architecture goes beyond the building, goes outside of the building, interior design comes inside. So what happens in case of interior design is you think of all the interior spaces that are created by the external walls of a building. What you see in this photograph here is a bar, and here what you see in terms of design is the creation of the furniture inside, the lighting, the textures on the walls, the movement of people through it, the flow of people through it. So what interior designers think about is what level of comfort, what level of psychological safety, what level of ease of flow, materials, textures, etc., can we think about while creating an interior space? And this is an example of one form of interior space within a building. So I mentioned earlier in the introduction that there are a few new forms of design, and one of them has been referred to as interaction design. And this has come into more significance as we have a whole range of new digital artifacts that we use, things like smartphones, things like tablets, things like computers, and as we access more mobile interfaces, websites, to get a whole range of our work done. Keeping in mind that we interact with so many of these devices, the world of interaction design, or the discipline of interaction design, looks at how can we make this interaction or this engagement between us and these devices a lot more easy, a lot more user-friendly, a lot more aesthetic, a lot more sustainable. So that is the discipline of interaction design. Now, interaction design doesn't only refer to the interaction between people and these digital artifacts or these new electronic devices. In a sense, it refers to everything that we interact with. So in one way, you could think of interaction design as a much broader term for all forms of design, because in a sense, when we deal with something, we are interacting with it. So interaction essentially refers to all engagement between us and the material world that is outside of us. But the discipline, in a sense, emphasizes and focuses a bit more on these forms of devices that we use today. So you see an example here. This is a cell phone, and the screen that you would see on the cell phone, the design of the buttons, the design of the icons that you would see on the screen, the flow of tasks, the navigation across these screens, all of those are some of the key things that interaction designers think about. A subset of the discipline of interaction design is interface design, which now gets into the specifics of that screen. What kinds of images appear on the screen? What is the size of the type on the screen? What icons can be designed? How does the information flow? All that gets into issues of interface design. And finally, another new discipline of design is that of service design. Very often when you have tangible products, when you have physical goods, physical devices, consumer products, they often come hand in hand with a service. For example, if you take things like MP3 players, MP3 players often require that you need some sort of a service, you need some kind of a software that you need to connect with to be able to download those songs onto your device. If you think of something like in case of a building, you can think of a hotel. A hotel needs services. You need somebody at the front desk to check you in. You need someone to provide food. So all these services, be it hospitality, be it a hospital, be it software. If you go to a store, you have people who will help you buy things. There are people who help you service and repair things. So all of those things that refer to the services and the support that is provided for buildings and for devices, all of that refers to this new discipline of service design. So what we've done today is we have talked about a series of design disciplines, from the smallest artifacts like products to the largest things like landscapes. And some key things to keep in mind, like we've talked before, is designers, in a sense, think about three key things. They think about the beauty, they think about the utility, and they think about the sustainability of the things that they create. So whether it is a product or if it's a building or an interior space, these are some of the primary concerns that designers think about when they create these artifacts. And as we saw in the earlier photograph, these forms of design are all around us. The material landscape is full of products, full of buildings, full of interior spaces, full of graphics, and all that is what design affects in our world today. Thank you.